Welcome back for another instalment for the Trail of the Green Man. Today we're going to talk about the very first appearance of a green man in a publication. We are dealing with a publication in Geneva. It was dated in 1573 by a Robert Constantine. Now, the earliest block recorded is Block A. Now, be sure to go and look at the website and you will see more information about Block A and another video describing this block in more detail. But as you can see here, we have got a fine, beautiful, clear print of Block A. Now, what we have here is the spreadsheet. Again, this will be featured elsewhere on the website for you to browse and use the resources for yourself. Everybody is welcome. But we can see here the first instalment on the spreadsheet is Supplementum Languae Latinae, basically a dictionary for Latin. Now that is going to be quite important and we will discuss that. We can see here all the block A's, and basically this one is the original. This is the very first block A in print. Now if we take a little look, we will have a look at the front cover. Here we have it here, a Supplementum Languae Latinae by a Rob Constantino. Now what is quite important here is if we look back and think about the Fama and how it described how its members would be recognised by the initials RC. Now to me that was quite strange, because if all the members had the initials RC, then why is it discussing all the other members, Brother I.O. and various other members that do not have these initials RC? So when I first came across this publication, I was very surprised to come across the AA carving, which is something that has been discussed a lot in regards to Francis Bacon. Now, one of the first people to actually discuss this would be the Francis Bacon Research Society, and specifically Peter Dawkins. He has actually done quite a lot of research on this, and what we have here is found on his website. I must say, please go and have a visit. But this is his document on the secret signature, where he puts forward the idea that the AA is something very specific to a Francis Bacon. And I tend to agree with this. I am not going to go into the, how would I put this, the alchemical side, the philosophical side, because there is so much written in that before. I thoroughly recommend you go and take a read about this. We are going to look at it in a more straightforward manner. But one of the first things to notice is how the AA here is basically made up of two bars, and it's an interpretation that these are the two letter A's. While if we look at our example, it is clearly, I'll just zoom this in for you, two letter or capital letters A, no second bar. These are two straightforward letter A's, and we are going to use these two letter A's to help us form some kind of cryptographic structure that's going to help us understand the Rosy Cross. Now the importance of this AA carving is quite monumental, because the earliest recorded AA carving is 1576, and this is in a very rare copy. As you can see here, Peter Dawkins is describing the fact that it is so rare a copy that no copies can be found either in the British Museum or the Bodleian Library. So this is quite important, and he is linking this to Francis Bacon because there is sheets interwoven in this copy that belong to the author, and They are basically translations made in Francis Bacon's handwriting regarding Hebrew grammar, and there's various other transcripts placed within this book, Hebrew and Greek, Syriac and Arabic. So it's no wonder that what we have found an AA carving 3 years prior to the earliest reporting carving in print happens to be in a Latin dictionary also. So it's quite interesting when you read this and how he puts forward that Francis Bacon basically held this copy, and Francis Bacon was actually in Europe at this time in 1576. He had travelled across there to France and was basically working there, and Peter Dawkins does go into quite a lot of detail about this and has managed to track down several examples of this AA device. Again, you can find more information on this on the website, and perhaps another video discussing the importance of this AA carving. We will circle back around to Peter Dawkins' essay on this carving, because he mentions something quite important, and we will come back to that. I will show you that nearer the end. So we're going to focus on this document because there is a novel way that has been used to encrypt specific information, and this is something you're going to see throughout the website, especially in video format, to help understand and discuss the ambiances of the specific method, because it is novel in its construction and it requires a mastery of perhaps 2 or 3 languages, and not just a mastery of it but the phonetics of it. It's a very interesting way of hiding information. So the first things I'd like to highlight is obviously the AA here, which is clearly, as we discussed before, and the gentleman's initials being RC, which again we mentioned the FAMA, how it would be used to represent RC brothers. Now, I would like to point out that I don't believe that every RC brother has these initials. Again, this is all just allegory that has been bred into the FAMA, or one of the Rosicrucian manifestos. But we're going to take a little look at just this title page for now and see what information we can extract from this. Now, the first thing that you notice here in blue, now this is a telestic, and this is going to feature quite regular in our work. We see here we have an N, an O, a V, and the A for AE, or for Latin A, meaning A. Now, nova actually in the Latin means new. So I'll bring this over for you here to let's see, so we can go over this here. Nova, especially in New Latin based on astronomy, like we would talk about like a supernova and things like that. But basically nova is from the novus, meaning new. So with that telestic, straight away we've kind of got an idea here, something new, and we just need to keep things like this in mind. But there is another Latin word here, consta, which leads on to nova. Now, consta, again, being from the Latin, now here we have, let's bring this here. So here we have an example here, consta, and if you look down at the Latin here, there we go. The verb consta, second person singular, imperative of consto. And what we have here for consto is meaning consto, like together stand. Like we would use an example of consto as like constellation, where something is coming together. So we've basically got a proposition here of basically stand together new. Now, if we come back and we take a look here, when they talk about stand together but new, this to me sounds like there is some kind of play on words or play on letters, possibly some type of anagram where they stand together, something that's already together, but something new comes from this. If we take a little look here, what we do have is B.con. Now, we are missing a letter A if we are going to try to spell the word bacon. And what is quite common when we do this work is there's always some kind of help here. If we just take a little look, we have rob. Now, the word rob basically means to steal, to take, and that's exactly what we're going to do here, because beside the word rob, we have the letter A. Now, if we were to rob this letter A and place it in between where the dot is, we would get the word bacon. Now, this is quite important because even as Peter Dawkins describes the AA carving as being the alpha and the omega, he goes into a lot more detail in this. One is light, one is dark. If you look at the example on the page, the two letter A's, one is light, one is dark, and in the beginning and the end, it goes into some detail about that. But if we take the A being the beginning, and the full stop possibly meaning the end of a sentence, if this A was to move there because we have robbed it, we would get the word bacon. Further to this, we also have the letters R-O, which is in between here. Now, ro, or R-H-O, pronounced ro, we would have a Greek letter. Now, this Greek letter has a geometrical value of 100. Now, 100 is the same value of Francis Bacon. One is English or Latin gematria, and the other would be Greek gematria. This will be discussed somewhere else on the website. But further from this, we can also take the instruction, because we have AA, perhaps there's two A's, perhaps we could move this letter A to another position. Now, if this letter A, the red letter A, was to be moved to the other side of R, we would get B-O-A-R for Boer. Now, Boer is Francis Bacon's emblem. It was Francis Bacon's possible secret signature or signature he would use himself, and various emblems, even his crest. Now, the word Boer and rho having the value of 100, and then B-A-C-O-N for bacon, this is very helpful to let us believe that Francis Bacon could be responsible for this document. Taking into account the stand together new, now all we have done is move the letter A to two different positions. One position gives us bacon, the second position gives us Boer. So although there could be great symbolic value to this AA carving, here it is taken on a more simpler form, allowing us to actually construct specific words. Now, because we've read the word Boer backwards, there is some other hints here. If we look at this C-O-N and we read that backwards, we get the word knock. Now, I'll just bring this up for you. Now, knock, or N-E-C-K, is a word from the 14th century. It is basically the notch that is cut at the top and the bottom of the bow to allow the string to be inserted to make a notch. Now, that notch is a cut out to allow the string to go onto the bow. And this has got a very specific word, and that word is a knock. And if we come back and take a look, we actually have the word bow. Now, again, this is only phonetically, the spelling is not B-O-W, it's just bow. BO, but phonetically it still gives us the same. So we have a knock and we have a bow. Now, carrying on from bow, we can also cut a notch in a arrow. A notch would be cut in an arrow, and that is where the string would bed into the arrow as you pull back. Now, we have the knock, we have the bow, and then we have A-R-O for arrow. So we have the three components needed to make this bow and arrow. So this is us basically constructing something here. Now, what we're going to do next, if we come back, taking the bow, B-O, how it sounds, if we take a look at Nova again, at the end of Nova, we have M-U-T. Now that is mut, but if we use the U as a capital, we can phonetically get the word mute. And at the bottom of Nova, we get the M-U-T, again for if we take the U, phonetically we get mute, meaning basically a removal of sound. But what it does also mean is that it could be the end of something, as in there is Nova, it ends at the top and it ends at the bottom. But what it's giving us is this idea of sound. So if we keep that in mind and we think about a bow and the notch, if we cut the notch between the bow and the notch, that would allow us the space for the A to actually be inserted into. This is the reason why we get this notch and bow, allowing us to construct this idea in our mind that we have to cut a notch, and that notch is where we're going to allow the letter A to be inserted. But if we also think, if we have a new bow, we would also have a new string. And the first thing you would do with this new bow, once you've used this new string, would be to test it. Now this is where things could be over-interpretation. Yet throughout the website, you're going to see many examples of this. Now, if you can think phonetically of some kind of like elastic sound, especially if you were to take a long piece of cord and give it a good a twang or pluck, what you would get is a possible sound of tum. I know that sounds slightly bizarre, but if you think about it, it would be tum, tum, as if somebody was testing this new bow. And now that you have your new bow and your new string, you would now be able to go and hunt your boar. Now, this is all interpretation. And in one example, it sounds fantastical. But when you take everything in context, it begins to make more sense. Now, we're going to take a little look inside this book now. Being a dictionary, a Latin dictionary, it is quite difficult to work with. But because my language being English, some things are easy to pick out than others. And the first thing that we actually notice here, coming to the PDF just to allow us to go through this book quite quickly. If I give an example here, if we look at the top, we have a dictionary, but it's NA, meaning this is what's on the page. We can see NA. I'll just zoom in for us here. NA, NA, NA. But if we take a look, MV, NA, NE, which would make sense, it being alphabetical. And we're back to NA again. Then NE, as it carries on, meaning that this NA could possibly be an error. Now, errors is something that's going to feature throughout all of this work. And if we take a look even closer at PR, PE, then back to PR again. Now, another example, we have SE, it comes to SA, and carries back on to SE. Now, these are all explainable, apart from one. If we take a look at SA, we can see it's SE, SE, SE. If we keep coming down, SE, SE, SE. But here in the middle we have senatum agere or agere, which is SA. So this SA is explainable. This PE, again, as if you can look here, it's PR, 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 PR. Just pretty much similar to what we've had before. But if we take a look further down, we have PR, but the additional word is PE. Hence the reason why we have PE here. It's not out of order. Now we have NE. You see it's NA, NA, NA. But here we have NE, NE, as it switches to NE before it goes back to the NA. So this one could also be explained. It's not in the wrong place. So this one, GL. See here we have GO, GL, GE. So it's in alphabetical order, GE, GL, GO, and back to GL again. But if we look on this one, every example is GL, GL, GL. This seems logical, GL, GL. And here we have GO, GO, GO. And now we're moving on to GL, all GLs, and back to GR, GL, then we're on to GR. But if we come back, you can see here, GO, GO, GR. L is missed out, and then L takes its place on the next page. So this one is in the wrong place, while the others do have an explanation, but this one seems not to follow that explanation. So I think a closer look is needed. And here we are on to Photoshop to allow us to show this. Now, if we come down to the bottom of the page, the first thing we notice is cut A. I'll just zoom this in for us. Now, this cut A is very reminiscent of what we've done in the first page to rob A. This is something that I would consider like a flag for me to pick up on. We've followed the error to this page, and the very last line we have this cut A. Now again, on its own this doesn't mean anything, but if we look in this area, what we do come across is ROSI for rosy, part of the word ambrosius, meaning sacred, basically sacred. And underneath this we have CRO. Now this is very close to rosy cross. Now what we do see beside this word CRO is the English word TOP, top. And if we look atop the CRO, we come across our SS. So what we have here is rosy cross. It's telling us to look atop. We see rosy in the top of the CRO. We've got SS, rosy cross. Now, what else we have here is VISOR for the word visor. Now, visor, in its original form from, again, light notch from the 14th century, is a knight's helmet. The visor is the part that comes down and protects the face or the eyes from attack. Now, the visor, if it was to be raised to the top, would be considered a salute. This is the knights of the time lifting their visor to show people that they're not afraid of them, and in some way a mark of respect. Hence, this is where we get the modern day salute from, where they would raise their hand up to the point above their right eye, which is where they would basically place their hand on a notch to lift the visor up. And this visor is going to be important in other videos down the line. So what we have here is visor being lifted up to show their face, and their face is the face of the rosy cross. But there is something else here. If we take a look here just to the side, we have come, and this is very reminiscent of something that is going to be quite prominent in more examples to come. But we can see the word date running one way and then date running the other. Now, that is reminiscent of the CRO running one way and the rosy running the other. So what we have here is come date, and that is actually quite significant, thinking that significant because we feel that this is the earliest Greenman in 1573 and the earliest AA carving, but that's not quite true, because I'll give you an example here. What we have here is the Jean-Baptiste Porta book on cryptology, and this is printed in London in 1593 and contains the Greenman. But this is not the only example of this book. There is another example here, and this one is the same book but printed by another person. And this, we will go into this in more detail, but this one is a copy, more in fact a pirate copy. This one is dated 1563. Now, it's saying printed in Napoli. This is not true. This is again printed in London by another printer that we will discuss later. But this is a pirate copy. And inside this, we will see the AA carving. Now, if we come back and we think about this, this is a pirate copy of 1563. When it's actually supposed to be 1593. The 6 and the 9 has been turned. This is something we are going to talk about in great detail throughout various videos and the webpage. So what we have here is, with the AA carving involved, is a clear, how can I put it, example of date manipulation, whether the stationer's registers on one date or another date. We have a clear manipulation of the dates here, and I feel that this is quite important considering what we've just had here, come date and date. Now, it's hard to discuss all parts of this huge story in one video about the origin of block A, considering what we just seen here is a different block. This is block C. So this will be discussed in another location on another video. So coming back to the rosy CROSS, rosy cross, it basically leaves one letter here, which is the U which we used as a V for the visor. And basically what's happening here is rosy cross, and they're basically saying you and a salute. To find this in a 500-page Latin dictionary, following the errors, getting to here and finding in 2 lines a simple wordplay is actually quite fantastic. And I think they're getting to the point here of saying that it's a salute to you from the Rosy Cross. And we will show something like this multiple times. The same idea, the same phonetic working, and the same way of describing something that helps build a construction which allows us to extract an answer. It would be very easy to believe that this is where the work stops, but there is something else buried here that you would only notice if you had managed to extract Rosy Cross. Let me demonstrate. I'm going to highlight one line here as it runs down to the Rosy Cross example, and if we just take a look at the letters that this runs through, we have R, O, E, S. Now that is just a simple anagram of the word rose, but we also have a P here. Now again, this would be a simple anagram of prose, and prose is basically to write in an ordinary form, which I think explains the anagram. We will be able to explain the anagram a little bit better just around the corner. Now if we take that P and we look beside this, we have the word nil, N-I-L, from the Latin meaning no or none or zero or void or nothing. Now what this is explaining to us here is that although this P has been used, it doesn't have to be used. We can then remove it. It has a nil value. P is equal to nil. So that P can be removed, allowing us to form R, O, E, S, a simple anagram of rose. And looking further to this, we can see the word ferry here, phonetically ferry, meaning to move something or to transport something. Hopefully making it more clear that this S has to be transported to the E, allowing us to form the word R-O-S-E for rose. There's always a little instruction there that's going to help us build what is needed. Now if we take a look at the bottom here, where it began with the word cross and rosy and the word top, if we follow this line all the way to the top, what we get to see here is another simple anagram of the same word, R-O-S-I, the same word as we have at the bottom. And with a little bit more investigation, we can make out here where this line goes to void, but if we come, we have T, O, P for top. So we have top here at the bottom, rosy, and here we have an anagram of rosy with top. Again, this is just the verification steps that are required when extracting information. Now, what else do we have here? We can highlight this and we will put a line across. And what we get here is C-R-O-S. We have the word cross. C-R-O-S. And at the S we have sol for sun, or solinus, which is this sun, but we also have L-O-S-E-R for lose R. Now, we might not be exactly too sure what this means at the minute, but we will come back to this. The answer is coming. Now, something that can explain these anagrams in the moving of the letters, if we look here, we have C-O-G, C and O and G for the word cog. And further to this, the next capital letter is A for cog A. Just like on the front cover when we moved the letter A, and at the bottom here we still have the cut A. Now this word cog is something that we are going to use significantly throughout the Trail of the Green Man. Is there anything else here that could help us explain this cog, C-O-G? If we come down to the other arm, what we have is C-O-G, cog it A. Cog it. And again, it's talking about this A being moved, just like we've done as an example on the front page. But there's also something else here. This letter U is something that could also be cogged and turned. I'll just zoom in for us here to help us see it. Now, if this here was to be turned, let's give you an example here. What we would have here, if this N, which could be turned like a cog, for this U to turn into the letter N, we would receive the word Tanit. Now, Tanit is a female goddess from an entirely prehistory point of view, a Carthaginian deity, basically a female deity whose one of her symbols was a rose. And that would be quite interesting, using this cog to turn a letter as an example. But something still doesn't seem to sit right. If we look just above it, here we have the example of cog it A. We have a simple anagram of the word gear, G-E-A-R, a synonym for the word cog. Now, this is going to come out multiple times, this moving of letters, a way to hide, a way to conceal something. Very simple anagrams that just need a few words or a few letters to be sorted. But what is the point of all this? Do you remember when we spoke about date and date? One date leading into another date. Now that would have a meaning, one date to another date. But also, from the Kabbalistic tree of life, dat, D-A-A-T, or D-A-A-T-H, for dath, or dat is a position on the Kabbalistic tree of life. The dat is the centre position in the middle of the cross. And we have this expression, date and date. One date running into another. Now, there is an expression for that. It is called an era. A particular era in time, which starts at a point and has an ending point. And here we have, running into the centre here, E-R-A, for era, which is a point of time to another point of time. So now maybe this lose R might have an explanation, because Solinus, the sun, by its very nature, would melt ice. And during this melting process, we would indeed lose the letter R. The structure here is very entertaining, and what it is hinting at is to basically, if we remove the R, it would allow us to enter that space where R would be. What could it possibly be hinting at? What is at that position? We're not going to carry on any further. If you've enjoyed the video, please come along to the Trail of the Green Man, the Facebook page or the Discord, where we meet, discuss these things, and we will basically try to explore other avenues and other people's interpretation and see if we cannot get to the end of this fascinating mystery. So if you have some spare time, whether it be 1 hour or even more, you could lend help to solving one of the unsolved mysteries of the last 5, 6, 700 years. At the Trail of the Green Man, that's exactly what we intend to do. Even if you cannot spare the time, perhaps you would still like to be involved. This is where donations would be very welcome. Come along, go to the website. If you feel like you want to help me keep the lights on, feel free to make a small donation there, and we will crack this mystery together. Thanks for listening. I hope I see you there.